All right, reflection number 5. I chose to do it on burnout, which was the topic that we just talked about this past Monday. Burnout to me is when you start to feel exhausted physically and mentally with your job, and when your job begins to be a burden instead of something you look forward to or can be excited about. I think burnout happens in all professions, so it's not shocking that it happens in athletic training. Some reasons I think it happens in athletic training. The biggest one being that we're notoriously overworked and underpaid, especially in the traditional setting. So like in colleges, for example, I'm at Mount Union right now. They're understaffed. And so a lot of people have to cover other things. A lot of people right now have more than, the typical 2 or 3 sports when you're in a college setting. So they don't really get an off season as much right now because they're short-staffed. And then again, they didn't get like a raise or anything to be covering any other sports. So some examples for high school is that you're literally covering all the sports year round. So again, you're not getting much of a break. An example for like a clinic or a hospital we talked about in class was like the repetition, that you're not really getting anything different much. You're doing the same thing day in and day out. So then, it can hurt you and your patient, really, if you think about it. You getting bored with what your work is and just having them do the same thing over and over again because you're too bored or too lazy to make a new plan or change it up a little. And like when I was in the clinic setting at Crystal Clinic, I think I would get bored very easily with that job because all the athletic trainers do is literally go in and take a history of the patient, and then you just hand it off to the physician's assistant. They did get to see like different things, but you don't get to, see how it plays out because you just take a history and then that's the last time you see them. And then industrial and other unusual setting examples, they do like, at least at Amazon, it's a more set hours, but you're working like factory hours. So you work like a 12-hour shift or whatever it is. And I also think that I did all this schooling and to go to an industrial setting and only be able to use like first aid basically could lead to burnout because you're again just doing the same thing day in and day out, and you don't really have much of a scope of you don't have a wide scope of practice pretty much. And I also think for those, depending on where you work, how big of an industrial setting it is, you're kind of just another number. And then we talked about ways that we could make this better. So I think a lot of us agreed on communication being a big thing. So for one, not being afraid to say no, or not being afraid to prioritize yourself, because your job is not your entire life. And not being afraid to ask for those days off to your superiors, or have people cover your sports. Another thing that's important is to set boundaries. Again, communicate with the coach, communicate with the rest of your staff, and set boundaries. I'm only going to be here from this time to this time, this day and this day. Another thing we said was utilizing resources. So your PTO that you get, definitely utilize it, because as athletic trainers, we love to we're there, we do feel like it's our life, and we don't like other people taking over our sports or whatever. We become selfish and possessive. So don't be afraid to take that PTO and let other people handle your team because they're capable. And then I also think that an increase in pay would definitely help with the burnout rate of athletic trainers, just because, again, we're overworked and underpaid. So I think that a lot of the times makes it a little worse. I think burnout is really due to happen in any job, but I think it's important to find a job where it doesn't feel like work. Rachel and I have talked about it before, and she tells me all the time. So she works with men's basketball and softball. She played softball and she played basketball, and the coaches that she works with are two of the best coaches on campus. And so she tells me all the time that her job just isn't work to her. It's fun. It's what she likes to do, and she being at a basketball game, being at a softball game, being at softball practice, being at basketball practice, that's fun to her. That's ideal to her. She likes watching basketball. She likes watching softball. The coaches that she works with are super cool, and the softball coach is even someone she went to school with, so she's friends with her. So they just, it's fun to hang out with her. So I hope that I can find a place or setting where I feel that way too. Because the whole reason I switched to athletic training is clearly not for the pay, but because it's something I'm passionate about, and I think I would enjoy doing much more than any other job, because I am passionate about sports and helping athletes. And so I know it took Rachel a while to get there, but I hope that I can get there one day too, where my job does not feel like work. It's enjoyable to go to.